This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
The opinions on this program are those of the program host and guest and not necessarily those of WPSL. WPSL does not endorse products that may be mentioned. Any reproduction or retransmission of this broadcast is strictly prohibited without written consent of WPSL. Legal questions? Ask a lawyer. Give us a call at 340-1590, 340-1590 here at the studios of WPSL. And Ask a Lawyer with your host, attorney Stuart M. Address.
Or within reach of my voice, and I am told that I have a very loud voice, so I might be reaching a lot of people. This is another edition of Ask a Lawyer. Hopefully you're tuning in because maybe you have some questions. If so, give us a call at 340-1590. As they say on radio and TV commercials, that's 340-1590. Batteries not included. All right.
But it's really tough to find the 15 on your phone, you know?
All right, 1590.
There you go.
Sometimes you say 1590. It's like, huh? O?
Where's the O?
I don't know. You can't work to the lowest common denominator. You have to assume.
Well, you do in television news.
You got to assume there's some reasonable level of you think you're going to work towards. Otherwise, I don't know. What can I say?
We had a news director who said, "Remember, you're talking to 13-year-olds," and this was in Los Angeles.
I'm not going to say anything about the public school system there. All right, so what is another topic that has been in the news recently? There are so many. There is a topic, I do discrimination and civil rights law. There is a topic over the last couple of years that has really been gaining prominence in both the political discourse, legal opinions, and social discourse. It's talked about at schools, homes, religious institutions, bathrooms, and almost anywhere else. There was a hint there. So I thought I would discuss some of the rights and where they come from for those who are transgender. Transgender seems to be the 2010s version of 1950s being gay. A lot of confusion, a lot of lack of understanding, a lot of misapprehension, and a good deal of revulsion. Now, I will admit, the first time I was faced with this topic a couple of years ago, even as a discrimination civil rights attorney, I had some difficulties with it. I still do. I'm not 100% on all the rights that transgender individuals are seeking. And then again, a long time ago, I wasn't 100% on all the rights that people who are gay were seeking. And over time, my views have moderated. That's often what happens in society. With time and with knowledge, views tend to moderate. But right now, this is a hotbed of discussion. It's a hotbed of litigation. So let's look at first, what are some of the areas in which transgender rights are already protected under law? The first that I'll point to briefly is Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, which is something I deal with almost every day because it protects individuals against discrimination, gender, race, age, disability, national origin. And there are some questions as to whether other categories are included. For example, although I won't get into it right now, sexual orientation. In some parts of the country in federal courts, it is protected under Title VII. In other parts of the country, it is not. The EEOC has come out with its opinion that sexual orientation is a part of gender, and sex discrimination. And so they believe that it was intended by Congress and is part of Title VII. A lot of courts agree and allow sexual orientation lawsuits. There are plenty of courts in different parts of the country who say it's not in the statute. We're not going to follow the EEOC's guidance. We believe the EEOC is writing law that is for Congress to write, and therefore you file a sexual orientation lawsuit here, we're throwing it out. So now what happens with transgender? Even newer than sexual orientation, transgender certainly is not in Title VII. So the question becomes, does it fall under the gender category or the sex category, or both?
I'll tell you, the colleges are having a difficult time with Title IX.
And that's the next thing we're going to talk about, and the primary thing we're going to talk about. And I'm just going to touch briefly on Title VII. Now, neither the Congress or the Supreme Court has yet established transgender individuals as a protected class. In the district courts, district federal courts, you got a wide range of opinions based upon the interpretation of the EEOC, which says that sexual identity is protected. Sexual identity, gender identity, we can have a field day and 20 shows on discussing exactly what that is.
Isn't it the same?
Not really when you get to transgender. Transgender is not based upon sex, it's based upon gender. There are transgender individuals who, if they were to make the shift actually to the other gender, would still want to be with a person of the gender that they were from. So now they have effectively become gay. So they haven't made the shift because of sex, they've made the shift because of gender. And it becomes much more complicated.
Wow.
Okay?
No kidding.
All right. Now, the courts have concluded essentially that transgender persons, many of the courts, are the same as other persons. This carries over to the workplace. They're to be protected from sex stereotyping and gender discrimination in Title VII. However, at present, in most courts, you're not able to file a lawsuit under Title VII. So that sort of leaves you in a no man's land. Title IX, which you bring up because I know you do so much with IRSC, Title IX of the Civil Rights Act applies to elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, colleges. Title IX was initially promulgated to provide equality to women. All right, so ABC University has 20 men's varsity sports in Division I of the NCAA and 2 women's. Women complained. And ultimately, it was determined that Title IX provided for gender equality, and that if you are going to have 20 varsity NCAA sports, Division I for the men, do you need 20 for the women? Not necessarily. 18, 17, but it needs to be close. And not only that, budget. Budget needs to be, if not identical, within some reasonable realm of equivalence.
Then you get into revenue and non-revenue sports.
Exactly. Now, look, we all know, for anybody who follows any college sports, there is really only one college sport that is a revenue maker, and that's football.
Right.
So, all right, now let's look at it from another perspective then. The football team at ABC University is in the top 10 of the NCAA, Division I. They rake in hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue and merchandise sales and in naming rights, all sorts of stuff. And they want to build a new stadium with that money. Can they do it? No. Because that money is going to go into a pot of all the money that is revenue for all of that university sports, and it has to be divvied with some reasonable proportionality to all the sports. Now,
You hit that word reasonable.
that's right, and this is what creates litigation.
Yes.
Because I will even say, thank you, Marianne. Marianne says I have a great voice for radio. I appreciate that. I would even say that if football is the predominant revenue maker, it should receive an extra share of some sort, because that's what's bringing the money to the university. It's what's bringing the name to the university. Sometimes it's even what's bringing the prestige to the university. And the idea that, and I'm just going to pick a sport, please, I'm not against the sport, but the idea that the crew team has to pro rata or whatever per capita get roughly the same amount as football, I think is absurd. And I think that's true for any other, even baseball, which I love. How many people are in the stands at a college baseball game? Yeah.
Oh, it all depends. I mean, if it's Division I, especially down here in the Southeast,
Really?
5,000 fans.
Okay, but compare that 5,000
Well, yeah.
to 50,000 or
100,000,
80,000 or 100,000
Yeah. No,
football
I get
fans.
I get it. Yeah.
This is, there are problems with Title IX, but the predominant impetus for it was equality for men and women. So now, what happens when we get into transgender issues? That's relatively new. Well, under Title IX, which bans sexual discrimination in schools, the courts have made it clear that this includes discrimination against someone because they are transgender or don't meet gender stereotypes or expectations. Title IX applies to all schools from K to 12 to college that get federal money. There's the kicker. If the schools don't take federal money, Title IX doesn't apply. But most schools take some federal money. So, when you're looking at that now, I saw a case was filed last week in another state. And it was really an interesting case, and it made me think. And I don't know where I'm coming down on this. I don't want to come down on the side of the plaintiffs only because the people representing them and advocating for them are the most vile groups you can imagine. I don't want to be on their side. But when I looked at just the issue, I'm uncomfortable. Here's the issue. 3 women filed suit in federal court last week, and they were in track in college, claiming that 2 transgender males who were now identifying as female, had not had transsexual surgery, but were identifying as female, were allowed to race, took first and second place, and this reduced their prospects for college, it was high school, for college scholarships. And so they filed suit under Title IX, claiming that it was unfair to allow transgender males who have biological advantages in speed to compete against them. Folks, you've got to agree and disagree on these topics. I'm telling you, call, yell, scream, make believe I'm Rush. You've got to have an opinion on this. If you don't, then you're mush. You're dead.
Yeah, one of them was racing in Boston over the weekend, and she was different. I don't know.
Okay, so
I don't know what else to say.
So here's my. I'm an attorney. I try to think of this from a legal perspective, but I also think of it from a perspective of I'm a person, and I try to believe in against discrimination. I'm in favor of civil rights. So why does this issue cause me such consternation and difficulty? Because I don't know exactly where I stand on all of the aspects of this issue yet. Is it fair that what are essentially teenage boys are competing on the girls' track team for championships where college scouts are watching? My instinct is no, it's not fair. Unfortunately, when I look at the groups that are advocating for these three ladies, I don't want to be associated with any of them. They are racist, vile groups that, basically are anti-transgender completely, anti-gay. I mean, some of these groups that are pushing this case, it's not just the issue of racing, they're pushing an agenda. And I don't agree with the agenda.
Why in the world would they do that then? If it seems to be...
Because they want to get rid of the guys racing.
Okay.
And then they can get rid of girls racing in men's sports. Or participating in football, or baseball, or hockey,
Yeah, that's a
So in other words, look, if there are groups that believe in the purity and separateness of the races, there are groups that believe in the purity and separateness of the genders. Here comes our first call, and goodness knows, I don't know what I'm facing.
We have no idea here. Hold on, let me try and find the right button here, and hopefully we've got him.
All righty, it looks like we've got AC, initials, and I can understand why, from Port St. Lucie. AC, how can I help you?
Hi, good morning. The only reason I use AC is because my first name is Andriana, which is kind of long.
Okay.
Hi, I'm breaking all the rules, and I'm talking on the phone while I'm driving. Responding to your call about the transgender identity racers, I'm going to say because of the fact that you're talking about young males that definitely have different physiological attributes that younger females do not, that is not a fair situation. And essentially, they're discriminating against the young women because they're not putting them on a, quote, equal playing field like everybody says they want.
And
identity is one thing.
Go ahead. Go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Identifying is one thing, all right, but then if you're not really going through the hormonal transformation, which may cause you to lose some of your upper body strength, your different physiology, yeah, then that's just identifying. I mean, that's just like that young woman Dolezal that identified as a black woman all those years with the NAACP. So identifying with one thing in that sense is not, I don't think they should be allowed to do that. If you're already, go ahead.
My instinct is I agree with you. But I'm not sure I agree even with myself, honestly.
Okay.
Because I can see in some ways the argument the other way. And you can get onto, as they love to say in the first year of law school, you can get onto a slippery slope here. If we say no here, then how many other areas can we say no to transgender rights?
It doesn't work that way. That's not the real world. That may be in law. But that whole argument of, well, if we do it for one, then we have to do it for everybody, I think there has to be sometimes you have to just do it on an individual basis or an individual situation, because if you lump it all together, then there are people that are going to...
I'm sorry.
Whoops.
Did we lose her?
Yeah,
Oh, damn it.
Oh, there you are. There you are. Okay.
She's on a cell, yeah. Go ahead.
Go ahead. Finish what you were saying.
No, I'm just saying the unintended consequences, you're probably going to cause more damage than anything by lumping everything into one. Like if we do it for one, then we have to do it for all.
The law of unintended consequences. You're right. There's the law of unintended. Congress passes legislation all the time and finds out, oops, guess what? This wasn't what we intended. And
correct.
You're right. And it requires, and from the way you're describing where you're coming from, I would say you fall into this category. It requires reasonable thought about the issue and trying to maybe separate one issue from another issue, and the courts, if Congress isn't going to do it, the courts trying to decide in a logical way, creating a framework to consider these things and not making a black and white decision, but making shades of gray depending upon what the particular issue is.
I would agree. And you have two contradictions. They're reasonable and logical, okay, coming out of all these different avenues of lawmakers. I think what we need to do is stop worrying about being so politically correct and actually start looking at the circumstance. Let's say, for example, you've got a transgender young male, okay, that is wanting to do these races, okay, and then you have the females that have to compete.
Right.
I don't know how you test them to make it so that they have equivalent chances.
Now, let's reverse it a little bit. I like having this little discussion with you, but let's reverse it a little bit. Mm-hmm. There is a situation I read about, a month or so ago, and it's not even an American athlete. It's a foreign Olympic athlete that was told, in order to race, you have to take hormones to undo what is perceived to be an advantage you have. Now, is it fair to tell an athlete that you have to take hormones to undo your natural abilities? Because in racing, isn't it what isn't your natural abilities in everything, in all sports? Isn't it your natural abilities that give you the advantage? So to tell somebody to take medication to undo something, or you can't race, now, is that fair?
Well, that word fair I have issue with. I mean, because if you want to go to the fair, go somewhere else, because that's not the real world. I look at it this way. If it's a male that's running against a female, if they're of equivalent stature, musculature, strength, and everything else, then I would say, okay, you could do that. But then if you're putting a competing male against a female that is not of the same stature, if it's not equivalent, like a boxing match, if there's too much differentiation, then that's not fair.
Now, okay, Adriana, you just came up with an interesting test. You may have just come up with an interesting legal test.
Oh, boy.
That's right. Consider yourself, maybe you're the first one to have thought of this. I don't know. In wrestling, they have all these classifications, 132 pound, 148 pound. If you're male or female, if you're 148 pounds, you wrestle against each other. All right, so maybe we can somehow try to extend that conceptually to certain other types of sports, let's say track. So, if you have a transgender male and you have a female, and they both weigh 150 pounds, and they both have, within a certain degree, say muscle mass, maybe then it's okay. But maybe at some point, at some percentage, some ratio, you say it's not fair. Now, this really is tough. It's not an easy issue. It's tough on fairness. It's tough in the real world. It's tough politically. And it's tough for those who are naturally born males and females. And it's tough for those who are transgender. Because unless one is going to simply say, screw you, then you have to acknowledge, what are the rights? Where do we have to be fair? How can we be fair? And where can we say these are differences, just like we would say these are differences for men and women? And in some aspects, there are, and they're considered, acceptable. If you're a woman and you're in the police academy, you better be able to get over that wall and do everything the man can do within the same time frame. Otherwise, you're not going to be on the street as an officer.
So what's the big drama of requiring the same thing in sports? Oh, because what? It's not politically correct? No, we need to change that whole attitude of PC and be more realistic. Yes, these are the requirements. If you want to get into the service, you have to be able to perform in this manner. If you can't do it, you don't get to play.
All right,
period.
So what do we do then? Let's say we're in middle school or even in high school, and you have somebody who is just beginning to identify honestly, because that's the real issue here, as transgender, and you tell them you cannot participate in this sport because, what is the impact upon that person, upon their psyche, upon their identity of self? How much damage are we doing?
how much damage are we doing to the females that are going through that kind of extreme also? This goes across everything in life. Okay, it's also damaging to the females. And I know that the girls really do. I mean, women do get a lot of preference at certain levels, okay? And that's a whole other issue that I won't even
Adriana,
go into.
Can I thank you for your call? We actually have 2 other calls
Sure.
waiting.
Good,
But
there you go.
I do thank you, and I think you're espousing a view that a lot of people have, and you're espousing a view that is reasonable, but a view that a lot of people will disagree with. And I'm not even 100% sure where I come down.
Adriana needs to talk to the NC2A.
So thank you very much for your call. I appreciate it.
You guys have a great day. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you. All right, we have John on line 1 from Port St. Lucie. Hey, John, how you doing? John, you there?
Yes, I am.
Hey, how can I help you? How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. How's my favorite lawyer doing?
Well, if I'm your favorite lawyer, I'm doing really good.
Okay. Adrienne is a tough act to follow. She's very intelligent.
Very intelligent, yes, very eloquent, and it was a good discussion with her.
Yeah, so it's really gone downhill, John.
Right? Well, I'll tell you, if Attorney Address can be working with a handicap, I guess, Adriana, I can. Adriana, give me a call when this program's over, please.
Adriana, call John. This is Match.com on 5090 WPSL, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
I want to ask you, as far as a transgender person, athlete competing against, a woman or a woman competing against a man.
Okay.
Is that a right or is that a privilege to?
It is a right under Title IX of the Civil Rights Act.
Okay.
That's a great question, John.
Participating in the sport is a privilege that the university can make rules. You have to have a 3.0 average, whatever. That's a privilege. Right. But once you are provided that privilege by the university and they're following the rules, they're not excluding you, for a violation of law. But once you're admitted to that sport, then it's a right under Title IX.
Okay. And forgive my ignorance, but what's the difference between a transsexual and a...
transgender?
Transgender,
all right.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy.
Okay.
I've learned a lot about this over the last couple of years. All
right.
There are people that are transgender that identify as either male or female, believe that biologically they were born in the wrong body.
Well, usually they've had the surgery, right?
Yes.
They've done that.
Well, no, not usually they had the surgery. That's way later on. You can feel you can perceive yourself as transgender at 3 years old. Okay.
Oh.
So they perceive themselves as the other gender, and they want to increasingly behave as if they are the other gender. We can get into bathroom rights and sports rights and all these other things. They may or may not down the road have the intent of having surgery, but transgender is somebody who identifies with the other gender, but has not had surgery, has not been physically changed. They may go their entire life being transgender and not having the actual surgery, which would make them a transsexual. Okay? That is the difference. It's once you actually have the surgery to change you, that's transsexual. Transgender is, look, there could be people that are transgender, let's say a transgender male, biological male, who really perceives himself as a female. Maybe instead of having the surgery, they're comfortable with simply dressing in female's clothing. Maybe that gives them the comfort and they get through that life in society, and nobody ever even realizes it. Or maybe they dress in female clothing on the outside. People do realize it, and, you have to adapt to it. Or maybe it's not a question of dressing in female clothing, but maybe it's it's hard to go through the bullet points. I know there's probably somebody who's listening who can go through them for me, but that's just an illustration. The real
I wanna
difference. Go ahead.
If you have someone waiting, I want to tell you a quick story.
I have one
true
person,
story.
but that's okay. My friend will wait.
Back in the late 90s, around 97, I think, or so, I met a lady who had been a man, and she was working in a store as a salesperson, and she was a real, easy to talk to, easy to get along with, her character, and we became friends. And she had kind of rounded shoulders, like a guy, and her hands were large, but she wore a dress, and
Right.
and anyway, she was very strong. Change the transmission in her truck, and do plumbing and all that.
Okay.
So I don't think there were too many, females that could compete with her strength-wise. Same as competing in sports.
Right.
Like
Well,
Adriana said, they have to have the same.
I'll tell you, and really everybody out there, that there are a lot more people that are transgender than people realize. Under the Obama administration, we had a Undersecretary of State who was transgender, who didn't hide it from people around her, but did not announce it publicly for the world. We have also had, I met an attorney not too long ago that actually represented another client of mine. And at first, she looks like a woman, looks a little bit mannish. I didn't perceive anything. She was an outstanding attorney. She is an outstanding attorney. And I've referred many clients to her since then. It was only sometime later somebody said, she was a man. She had the surgery. There are a lot of people that sometimes you can perceive it, sometimes you can't. It's almost as if the stereotypical homosexual, stereotypical gay person, with the flamboyance and the body gestures. There are some of those, but there are also homosexuals that present as what I guess other people would call normal. I hate to use that word, but even on Modern Family, the gay character is straight, and the other gay character who acts more straight on Modern Family is gay. So they're both doing some great acting.
Yeah.
But I found it amusing when I heard that the gay one was straight and the supposedly the other gay one, but who acted, as a lawyer, and that he was gay. You can't always tell, and it doesn't really matter. And I'll say one other thing, that a while back, I said there's even been moderation or a transition in my views, over decades in homosexuality. There was a time where I met somebody who was a school teacher. This was at a time where a lot of people did not want homosexuals teaching their kids in public schools.
Right.
And I got to tell you, when I got to know this person, and somebody who is listening right now will know who I'm talking about. When I got to know this person, I would have trusted my kid with him. I would have trusted anybody with him. I didn't care who he was, what he was, how he perceived himself. I just knew that I didn't even know what kind of a teacher he was, frankly. I just knew as a person, I would have implicit trust in this person with my kids. And, it takes time sometimes for society to come around. And I suspect the transgender issue will evolve over the next decade or two.
Well, there's been homosexuality since the beginning of history.
That's right.
I wanted to tell you that we just did a play at my theater. It's called Norman, Is That You?
Oh, yes, I've heard of that play.
Yeah, the son was gay, and he had a mate, partner that lived with him, because his father didn't know, and then his father came to live with him and found out.
Right.
But it was very well. It was funny, but it wasn't.
Was that the one
abusive.
at the Pineapple Playhouse?
Yes, yeah.
Yes, I wanted to go see that, and I didn't get there.
Well, you know what? Have Greg give you my number and call me, and I'll get you a couple of tickets.
It's still there?
Well, no, it isn't. It was the last play of the season.
Right, that's what I thought, yeah.
Yeah, the next one is the beginning of the season is September.
Yeah, I've been there a couple times. It's a nice theater, and I enjoy the plays.
Yeah, I do the 50-50, and
okay.
I tell the jokes, and yeah, I do something else there that I'm not allowed to say.
Okay, well then don't say it. Anyway, I do have somebody else on the line behind you.
Keep you so long. Good to talk.
Thank you very much. I appreciate talking to you. All right, if Bulldog is still there on line 3, hello, Bulldog.
Line 3?
Bulldog, you there?
I'm here. Thank you, Stuart. Hey, Greg, just a side note. I called in, and whoever answered the phone, I suppose your receptionist said, "Oh, God." I said, "Hi, this is Bulldog." She went, "Oh, God."
You have a reputation.
It's a threat, I suppose. Anyway, Stuart, let's take it one step further.
Okay.
Serving in the military.
Oh, the military. Serving in the military. Okay.
Right.
That's something the president just ordered to be undone, and his military people are quietly disobeying.
It's been done.
They're not disobeying.
Undone,
they're slow walking.
Undone. I got to tell you, I served with blacks, and we totally got each other and understood. They had certain MOSs, we had ours. They did their jobs, we did ours, and ours involved more heavy lifting, that sort of stuff.
Okay.
And we got to PT, and we'd have to run 2 miles in, say, 16 minutes. They got 20 minutes.
Well, I don't know why actually they got more. I mean, because I don't think there's any difference in Caucasians and African Americans that, there should be a difference in time. But, you remember the story, I'm sure, in World War II of the Tuskegee Airmen. That had, the black squadron that had probably the best combat record of any squadron, any American squadron in World War II. I mean, and this is one of the things, that's been pointed to, as an argument for saying there is no justification, to separate at that time the races. And,
women in combat.
Yeah, combat. And we've done the same thing, with gays. First with Don't Ask, Don't Tell. Now we have the transgender issue because it's become a public and a political issue. And, it's a tough one. It's a tough one in reality, and it's a tough one politically. Politically, the reasons aren't always the best. Sometimes they are. But, when we had recently President Trump, basically say transgenders cannot, serve wherever it is they can serve. I don't know. I don't even remember. Sometimes I try to block some of this stuff out. And I do remember the discussion that the military commanders, the head of the Army, Air Force, and the commanders in different theaters were slow walking the executive order, which meant they weren't, quote-unquote, disobeying it, but they were not rushing to implement it. Now, if Mr. Trump gets another 4 years, they may have no choice, and then we'll have lots of lawsuits where the Supreme Court's going to have to decide whether or not you can, make these restrictions or bans on transgender in the military. I've heard. I've never served in the military. I don't pretend to know what it's like. But I've heard the argument that if I'm in the foxhole with you, and I know I can trust you, I don't care who or what you are. And
certainly,
that's true.
Certainly doesn't make any difference in Israel. Everybody serves.
Well, no, it's not. It wouldn't matter.
That's right. Israel's a good example.
But the thing is, because you get to prove yourself over and over in training. But where do you house them? You put them in the men's barracks or women's barracks?
Those are very good practical questions. They arise in the military. They arise here now in athletics. They arise in high school in bathrooms. They arise in the airport in bathrooms. All these are issues that we as a society right now are struggling with, and in fact, the courts are struggling with. Opinions, even though there's certain laws, opinions are all over the spectrum, depending upon who that federal judge is, and interpretation of Title IX is not consistent, and that's why ultimately things do get to the Supreme Court. They often get to the Supreme Court when there is what they call a split in the circuits. The split in the circuit courts of the United States. We're in the 11th Circuit. Where I used to practice in New Jersey is the 3rd Circuit. When there is a difference of a major interpretation of law among the circuits, the Supreme Court has to take it up so that the law is applied uniformly. Happened with abortion. And it's going to happen with abortion again, frankly, with all the laws that are being passed now. The Supreme Court's going to have to take one of them up and come up with some rulings so that, abortion doesn't happen one way in Alabama and another way in Florida. There are some issues that are federal issues, and there's some issues that are state issues.
I think the other thing is that they're saying is that, here in Florida, I don't know if there's this driver's license issue. If you identify as, it has to be what you were born as, on your driver's license, this and that. So,
and there are lawsuits over that too. You're right.
Yeah,
of course. There are transgender individuals who feel, and again, it's hard for me to really have a firm opinion on a lot of these issues, that feel that they should be entitled to put on their driver's license the gender that they identify with, not their actual biological gender. But I can also understand from a government perspective, from an enforcement perspective, from a law enforcement perspective, having it the biological, because if the driver's license says you're a female and they pull you over because they suspect you just robbed a bank and they see that, you're a guy, maybe they let you go. These are complicated issues. And there are lots of groups on both sides of the fence that argue them from outrageous perspectives. I mean, far, far left and far, far right. And what it takes for these issues, whether it's transgender, abortion, capital punishment, euthanasia, all sorts of issues, it takes reasonable argument, reasonable debate. It takes people that are reasonable on both sides of the issue to debate these issues so that more reasonable people in the country come around to one view or the other. And essentially, that is the purpose of the First Amendment, the marketplace of ideas. The framers, were very strong on First Amendment rights. They believed that let all the hate speech occur. Let all the disgusting stuff occur. And that it will be weeded out in the marketplace of ideas. And that is why we probably have a stronger freedom of speech in this country than anywhere else in the world. And freedom of the press. And one of the rights, frankly, I was going to go through some of the rights that transgenders have under Title IX, which I will try to get to just in bullet point form before we close the show. But one of them is under the First Amendment. They certainly have the right to speak out, be heard, and encourage and sometimes force a debate over these issues. I will tell you curious...
Well, I'll let you go and get to that, Stuart.
Okay.
Good talking to you again.
Thank you, Bulldog. I appreciate you calling.
I'll tell you, the issue for athletic directors now at colleges and universities, locker rooms.
Yes.
And bathrooms.
Yes. And those are not easy issues. It's easy to say, well, if you have a penis, you should be in the men's bathroom. And it's easy to say, I don't want, a guy, in the ladies' bathroom. It's a pervert. Well, people thought that about gays too. That, somebody who was gay in a locker room would be looking at all the other men, with a prurient interest. And it's not true. They're attracted to whoever they're attracted to, just like, guys are attracted to women are attracted to guys, and women are attracted to women. I mean, it's not true. Now, the biological part, gee, man, do you want a 45-year-old biological male who truly, honestly identifies as a female and has every right to do so and should be treated civilly and with respect, and I believe that. But do you want him going alone into a female airport bathroom where there are little girls? This is where people yell and scream. And a lot of that is what's called a straw man argument. It's the easiest argument to fight against something because you have an emotional reaction. Then you have to ask yourself, on the other hand, is that really what is likely to be happening? I mean, you can have a woman go into the ladies' room and abduct a child.
Well, I don't think abduction is necessarily the issue there.
And I also don't think that in most situations, a male that walks into the ladies' room, whether there are children present or not children present, is pulling it out. I suspect he's in a stall because ladies' rooms, don't have urinals. So, it's probably still private. I do understand the squeamishness of both genders of having a member of the other gender in a public bathroom. And a lot of places have come out now, even the movie theaters, with, transgender bathrooms or neutral bathrooms or, whoever wants to use it uses it. And that's one answer. Whether it's the right answer, I don't actually know. But the real issue here is, man, this is complicated. So let me, in the 5 minutes or so that I have, let me quickly bullet point under Title IX, transgender rights. You have the right to be free from discrimination because you don't meet gender-related stereotypes or expectations. You have the right to be treated according to your gender identity. And that's true even if you haven't done things like changing your ID or getting medical treatment. And your school cannot require you to show proof of these things in order to have your gender respected. You go into guidance and say, I identify as a female. Well, they have to respect that unless perhaps your parents come in, because you're still a minor, and say, at this point, I'm not going to permit that. You'll identify Johnny as Johnny, not Joanna, because that's a parental issue now. You have the right to be called by your name and the pronouns that match your gender identity. On Ask a Rabbi, maybe somebody will ask, but the rabbi has said that we don't really have gender-neutral pronouns yet, that some transgender people like to be called it. I cannot call a person it. I just can't do it. Okay, to me that is absolutely obnoxious.
Well, it's degrading.
Right, but apparently if you ask the rabbi, a lot of transgender people, because we don't have gender-neutral pronouns, and he doesn't want to be called she, and a she doesn't want to be called he.
Okay, I get that.
They've adopted it, or them. Them in a singular. To me, them is a plural. But refer to this person, a singular, as them. I don't know. You have the right not to be bullied or harassed because you're transgender or gender nonconforming. Dang right, I agree. Okay? You have the right to use restrooms and locker rooms that match your gender identity, and you can't be forced to use separate facilities. Boy, is this a big argument under Title IX. You have the right to get the same opportunities to learn and to participate in school life as anyone else, no matter your gender, including your gender identity or expression, or your race, nationality, or disability. I agree with that, too. You have the right to dress and present yourself according to your gender identity. Yes. It may cause some difficulties, but that's life. Society isn't always easy. You have the right to protect your privacy and to choose who you tell or don't tell about being transgender, and your schools must respect that. I agree there too. You have the right to join or start an LGBT student club or pride alliance. The school can't prohibit it. Well, certainly, I agree with that as well. Now, we only have a couple minutes, so we won't get to what can you do if you have a complaint. Maybe we'll get to that next Friday if people are interested. But
sounds just like the number of calls that we
yes.
got they are.
Well, I'm glad. Sometimes I'd like to spark a debate. I'd like to hear what people think. If you have a question about a possible case, that's what I'm here for. You call me. I'm happy to answer. Call Cheryl at 781-8003. That's 781-8003. Hi, Cheryl. But I also like to talk about the legal issues that combine. Oh, my goodness, the rabbi on line 1. So right before we end, hello, Rabbi. Hello, Rabbi.
Hi there. I did not ever say that they like to be called it.
I thought you did, honestly.
No.
Oh, boy, I'm in the doghouse.
They, yeah. And there's other new pronouns out there that some have preferred to use.
Such as?
J.
I'm sorry, say that again?
Z-H-E. G. So it's not he, it's not she.
Okay.
That one I think is a little harder, but no. They is actually APA approved now in professional publications.
But to refer to somebody in a singular as they.
Right, well, we do it with you. We don't use thou anymore.
Okay.
So, okay, but the point of it is that somebody, just as they have a right to be treated with respect, has a right to tell you what their pronouns are.
Well, I guess you're going to have to continue that on your show because we're out of time. And this is Stuart Address for Ask a Lawyer. Hoping you have a wonderful weekend, and I'll be back next Friday. Have a great day.
Holy smokes! We got the
I'm in
gloves
the
off.
doghouse, and I can't even stay because I gotta be in Palm Beach at noon.
Oh, holy smokes! Ask a lawyer. Man, it's white hot in this building. Oh boy! All right, we will be back again next week. WPSL Port St. Lucie, WPSL.com, worldwide on Alexa and Google Home.